The views expressed in the following show are of the host, the guest, and the callers. The content of the following show, its accuracy, authenticity, and the ramifications of the use or application of said content is the responsibility of those speaking and listening, not the broadcast medium.
All right, so we are back, and we are live. Feet to the Fire. I am your host, James Arthur Yanchik, the Black Knight of Talk Radio. Into year 16, we fly. Actually, coming to the end of 16. So we're going to start 17 soon, God willing, and the creek don't rise. So there we go. Tonight, I wanted to talk about something. I'm often inspired by posts that I read or talks that I have on the phone with listeners or family or friends, and if you happen to be one of the persons that I've communicated with, and it appears that I'm picking on your point, it's not the case. I really isn't. It just inspired me to go on a particular to talk about a particular thought line, the line of thought. And it's nothing personal. I think I've actually seemed to have offended people in the past by saying anything, but it's not the case. I appreciate all points of view, as honest ones. I mean, I have a real hard time in these days of this political nonsense. I have a very hard time dealing with, lies and political junk going on. I have no patience for it anymore. I have no patience anymore for that stuff. When someone wants to talk and they're going to give me like the political line and actually say the words, and this goes for right, left, whatever. Whenever they start doing that stuff, I just have no patience whatsoever. I don't want to do it. So that's where it goes there. But, I've been doing this now for quite a while. I've been listening to talk radio since I was a kid. I mean, what was I, 10? I had a radio, little pillow speaker on my radio, listening to AM talk radio. Dave Baum and Contact was the name of the show, WIND, 828-9110, 828-9110, Contact, And then there was Larry the Legend at night, and then Eddie Schwartz. And along the way, in the 90s, came Art Bell. And I was fascinated by Art Bell with his talk because it was, weird stuff. Nighttime radio in Illinois, Chicago was always not the normal talk. Off topic, interesting stuff. Art Bell took it to a next level. But one of the things that I found from listening to Art Bell onward and then doing the show was that most of the people listening are not looking to find truth. They're looking to further their suspicions. And that's where this title comes from over here is, the new word fake news has come out now in the Trump era, referring to stories that aren't true or that are either through inaccuracy or intent. But confirmation bias has been around forever, where people go looking for evidence to fit what they're thinking. And so that is the really, I think, the problem. The echo chamber would be those people who find one another of the same ilk and they high-five one another. I mean, that's everywhere. That's in everything from churches to politics to certain branches of science. I remember, years ago there was a battle between Big Bang and a steady state theory, and there were people in camps, each camp arguing about it. And then you got into quantum mechanics, which is now called quantum physics, but at the time was quantum mechanics, and then that was people arguing about that with this relativity and so on. I mean, it's all goes on, and people tend to find a camp they go in. which is kind of, I guess it's kind of a normal or survival technique. Familiarity is a form of safety, and depending upon one's, I know there's been tests that find that people who go like rock climbing and jumping out of planes are lacking in a certain hormone, and people who like to just sit and read a book or watch the river are high in this hormone or something, and so they don't need that high in terms of adrenaline to get there. So a lot of that has to play with it. What I was kind of forced into doing was finding the truth, because make sure I'm getting flashings on the screen. All right. I've been kind of forced into finding the truth because I was in my own paradigm bias. I mean, we all are, even now. And so we have to make sure we constantly keep a self-examined life is the only one worth living, according to Socrates. You got to keep kind of updating it and so on. So I was kind of forced into it because of my clash between the reality and the Bible study that I was doing, and through my life with divorce and various aspects, it caused me to take a hard look at what are things that I thought were just true and what I believed. So I was kind of placed into like a pressure cooker, boom, that broke me apart, broke the paradigm apart, and I was forced to grapple with it. And at that time, I remember saying to myself that I don't want to I want to know what's real. I want to go past finding truths, because if people talk about your truth and you got to be true to yourself and your truth and all that, I want to find what's real, unpleasant as it may be, because if you find out what's real, then you're not going to get whacked over the head with a 2x4 when it comes to you. Good book, by the way, Avoiding the Cosmic 2x4 by Dr. Rita Louise. And so I say all this in preference because what I've been doing with over the years from Art Bell onward was to, and I tend by nature, and this is where I guess Socrates comes in. Maybe you can blame my mother, critical, I don't know, whatever. But I tend to find the negative or the baloney. Now, I do have a truth meter. I mean, I do hear truth, and there's a resonance there, and then I investigate it and find out the truth in it. But I also have a truth, a BS meter, so that I'm attracted to the BS, and I look into it and find out it's BS. And I've been doing it lately on Facebook. I mean, it's not really hard. I'm seeing these people referring to various movie and people, Clint Eastwood, Denzel Washington. There was one just on now, Magnum PI. I can't think of his name, though. I'm seeing his face. They all. It seems to be a desire to get movie people to like Trump, and when they quote stuff from him, it sounds good. If you're a Trump fan, hey, good, because I'm getting all this criticism from the movie people, De Niro and whatnot, who I used to like a lot. Now I can't stand, just from his attitude. You want to have people, but lo and behold, when I went looking through this stuff, even stuff like quotes from John Lennon and Kurt Cobain talking about predicting a Trump era type of thing, when you look into it, it never happened. The one about John Lennon was actually credited a year after his death. That's kind of Kurt Cobain. You cannot find it anywhere. You just see this. It pops up one day on a website somewhere, and it sounds good. And so it gets passed around. Because there's this desire to have rock people, musicians, actors, somebody please say something nice or honest anyway about Trump. Not even nice per se. The one that was quoted from, I cannot think of his name now because I'm looking at him, from Magnum PI, Blue Bloods. He actually did a little stint in Friends. Mustache. Anyway, it wasn't even necessarily nice what it was quoting about how he's gruff and he tells the truth. So it's nice, but it's also, critical to a degree. Even that. I mean, none of that's true. I look up, there's no references anywhere other than this repeating echo chamber, it just went by, of this meme. That's the only reference. Single point reference is how I refer to it, where the news comes from one point. And believe me, something as huge as a lot of these things say would not be only found in some obscure website that a lot of the more we'll call them the mainstream, non-mainstream website, Breakpart and all these others, would love to break some of these stories they're saying. But it's not that they're prejudiced against them. It's just not true. And so I've been mentioning these things, and, some people they've not been happy with that. And it's like, well, you know what? You're on my feed. If I see something come across that I think is baloney, I'm going to look into it, and I will mention it. Otherwise, then silence me, which is people probably have been doing because the actual interaction has been going down. I just noticed I lost about 7 subscribers this last week. So, but what can I say? That's the deal. And one thing that got me thinking about, I'm going to mention another one before I get into the one that not triggered me, but got me thinking. Is a while ago I saw an ad talking about microwaves being very bad for food or whatnot, and there was a test. And this will segue into Snopes as well. There was a test that was done with the person claiming they took a picture of a plant at the same time I don't know if it was every day or every couple days, but the camera was supposedly set up in the same spot, and they fed the plant microwaved water versus a plant non-microwave water. And each time they posted a picture of the plant, there was like a leaf missing. I mean, literally a leaf was missing. And so I found this particular article. I found this thing was posted. I went and I found Snopes had dealt with it. Now, I know Snopes is politically motivated, and I understand. I know who's doing it, and their divorce and hookers. And okay, I got all that, right? So let's get down to the bottom line, the website. I know that the website is politically based. And so they're going to go out and sway things that are mentioned against. Like, you're not going to find things about Hillary and the Clinton initiative and all those fraudulent type of charities. I know you're not going to find this stuff in there. It's true. But it was interesting. Their arguments that they put down on this microwave stuff were very valid from my understanding of physics. Tom Selleck, thank you. That's who Ron in the chat room. I'm telling you, for people who've been listening for a while, whenever I see the person's face in my head, he could set me on fire. I'm not going to remember their name. So Snopes did a good job, an actual real job in science and physics on talking about this. But what they didn't do was, if you looked at each picture of the leaf, of the plant, and I wish I had it with me, but I did this all for a Facebook post a long time ago, and I learned I'll never do that again, because now go ahead and find it. It's like it's buried under tons. So I don't. I got Kelvin saying hi in the chat room and Ray's there. Yeah, come on into it's a live show at this time anyway. If you're watching and it's not live, then. But the chat room's here in there's one in Spreaker, but I'm looking. I can look across at the other monitor and I can see if somebody comes in there and says something, and I can deal with it. But most people come into the YouTube chat, so they did a good job. But when they looked at the picture of the plant, they showed 4 pictures of this plant, and each picture a leaf was missing. But what was not mentioned by Snopes, and what I saw, which further confirmed the fraudulence of this particular post, and I'll get into the technical stuff if you like about the microwaves, but if you take and combine all of the pictures, so in other words, if you take and got rid of the background and slide all the pictures on top of one another, it was the exact same plant. All the leaves that remained are in the exact same position than the picture before it. The ones that are missing, of course, are gone. So if you ever noticed time-lapse photography where they show a plant growing, and the plant moves around as it's growing because the light comes in the window, there's motion. And the picture of this had the sun the light was the exact same way. Everything was exactly the same, except there's a leaf missing. So what ended up happening is that this person, my conclusion was, they obviously took the same picture and removed the leaf and said it was a new time. So to me, it wasn't so I cited this, to make it easy, I just cited the Snopes argument at this argument. on this website and this stream in Facebook, and the person who was running it said, "Are you crazy? Citing Snopes? Are you blind? Don't you know that they're fake and all this stuff?" And then banned me. I guess they let me long enough to see that message, because when I went to respond, I was banned. I could not see that person's stream anymore. So the point I'm getting at is Snopes does get stuff right. It's just everybody. I mean, Snopes is not going. They're not going to go through every possible thing and lie about it. They're only going to change those political things that they want to, whether it be political or whether it be conspiratorial, chemtrails or something. They're going to change whatever they need to do on there, but other stuff is fine. So for somebody to block off information, we got, let's see, from sorry. Oh, Scotland. Okay, I thought that was bad. Perhaps we got the strip in from Scotland. I would do some type of Scottish accent, but I would just make a fool of myself, because I never see. I do this other show. I haven't done it in a long time, but it was a comedy show, kind of fun, and I used to make a joke about doing accents, but they were the same accent. I would do this kind of weird Australian accent, and I would just say that was it wouldn't go here though. But anyway, welcome aboard. The reason why I think people in the Midwest they got to think about accents is that for us, there is no accent here. I guess everybody says that. I realize that, but there's no accent. So when I hear an accent, it's like, cool. Oh, it sounds cool. It's like music. It's like, oh, that sounds cool. Especially if you hear people talking in England too, they also have this structure and it sounds so official, and they can tell you, they can tell you to go look in the garbage and go eat some garbage in the alley, and it sounds cool because of how they can say it. So anyway, so that's my point was that I'll look at Snopes stuff because unless it's politically based, there might be actual backup on it. Now back to the microwaves. One of the problems I have with people say that microwave cooking is bad. And I've talked with a lady who said she had a neighbor who was a physics guy, and he said microwaves changes the chemical properties of the meat. Well, I said, well, of course it does. It's cooking it. When you cook your food on a convection oven or like a quartz light, or if you cook it on a gas or a stove, you're using infrared heat, which is light, microwaves are light, electronic magnetic radiation. And you're using that to heat up the molecules in the food. What microwaves does, it heats it up faster. Now, there are components that may be disrupted by the speed in which they are excited. That's true. Now, I don't know if that counts meat, but when you're heating up something, microwave, just by virtue of the speed of the rising of the heat content inside, can cause trouble. But again, I don't think that applies to meat, and it definitely doesn't apply to water. And this whole plant thing was fake. So when someone says to me microwaves are no good for cooking, I mean, if you want to have a brown meat, it's not good. If you cook it too long, it turns into like solid, uncuttable stuff, because again, it changes the content. And if you don't think that cooking changes the chemical content of the meat, when you thaw meat and you refreeze it again, it ruins it. When you thaw meat and you cook it, you can refreeze it and it's fine. Why? Because it chemically has been altered by cooking. So that's how I'm using it as an example because it's really no toes are being stepped on. It's not political. It's not religious. But when you're looking at these things, there are a logical way you can look at it, and there's I don't want to say the word conspiratorial because that's been overused, but you can have this assumption of when they made microwaves, they did it because the Rothschilds got together and they wanted to wipe out civilization. So they allowed this particular food because it's going to change the food, it's going to hurt people, and et cetera, et cetera. And I'm not making fun. I mean, they talk about the 440A. They say, I've had a guest on talking about it, and I disagree with him. The 440A is actually, and it actually was a Rothschild plan to harm people vibrationally by changing the A to a 440. But I happen to know the history of music on this. It was one of the things that fascinated me. When you go back in time to the ancient instruments, they were at anywhere from 400 to, I don't know, to 460, I think. They were tuned variably. They were tuned like to the local tuning. And if you listen to recordings of original instruments played and the original tuning of the author of the piece, they'll be tuned to 400. And you'll hear the lower tone. It's almost like a little bit of a sadness. When it's kind of like, because a flat is like a little bit lower tone. So, well, now it's a Rothschild conspiracy that the A is 440. Now, I'm sorry, I can't handle that. Now, a 432 A might be better in terms of biofeedback from the sound. That could be possible. So I'm not arguing that aspect of it. In fact, Bach was one of the people involved with what should we make the A. It was a discussion that went on for decades and decades. So what I'm trying to do is to say, look, I said the word look. I gotta say that. I've been listening to talk radio lately, and I keep hearing people say, look, you want to pull back. You want to pull back and look at what you got that's solid, and don't leap into the theory behind it. Because, but I will say that kind of stuff does draw people in. There's an interest. When you look at websites that people have where you have crowds forming, they pick one of these little turnoffs, and they've gone into that topic. So somebody who's going to go into UFO conspiracies or, well, this sound conspiracy, or they're going to go into those areas. Now, it's not that there isn't UFOs or there isn't government stuff behind it. It's not that's not the point. It's that rather than trying to find the solid basis for it, be conservative, and I mean in the sense of solid ground or most solid ground, it flows down the imaginary path. And along the way, you pick up points that fit into your plan. That's what confirmation bias is when people, hey, I think there's this is the outcome, and so I'm going to find every reference that comes up that confirms what I'm saying, or at least is in the neighborhood. I'm going to use that for evidence. And that's something that we need to avoid if you're trying to find truth in reality, because you can get lost in it. And my kind of dismay was a lot of people don't want that. They have this this sense inside that this particular thing is true. I know it's true, and that's it. I know it's true, and I'm not gonna, And you could do that in Bible study. There's stuff, and what it does is it actually by holding on to positions that are weak, fallacious, or fantastical. Come on, throw me a word there. Fantasy based. By holding on those positions, along with things that are solid, that do have backup, that are true, or at least they have a good probability of truth. By putting those two together, the truth is tarnished down. And this is what the political use of conspiracy theories is that you could take somebody who holds on to a particular theory. I mean, they do with Alex Jones, right? Alex Jones says all kinds of stuff, and he's broken all kinds of stories that are true and so forth and so on, but they'll take something he said, and, you talk to somebody who doesn't listen to Alex Jones, and they'll say, oh, that's the guy who thinks there was no shooters at Sandy Hook, even though he didn't say that. But in Sandy Hook, you don't have an option of shooters like they told us or no shooters. That's not the two options. The options is there's shooters, but there were more shooters. The shooter that was there was a patsy, and they're professionals that made sure that he was dead when I left. Those are all options. You have the staged media stuff, which showing people marching in. Now, these are all things you can talk about. But because the main propaganda media want to keep a certain narrative, they'll say everyone talks about Sandy Hook is, conspiracy theorists, with other words, nuts, and then they'll bring various positions out. Another great thing to enter the internet these days is the flat Earth. And so when when people want to discredit a quote conspiracy theory that has actual meat on the bone, and they'll say, yeah, it's probably a flat Earth people too, or whatever. They started with the truther term for 9/11, and then the birth certificate and all this birthers for the birth certificate, and they did all that to discourage people from looking down that venue. But there's a lot of proof, and if you put yourself in a position where you say, no, it's controlled demolition, no, it's direct energy weapon, no, it's aliens, no, it just fell because of the planes, or whatever. When you pitch in your hole in one of those things, you're going to miss some of the other things. So for me, if you ask me about 9/11, it's I don't know about the alien part, but it's a combination where they probably had charges in the building based on the evidence of people saying stuff. There was people working in there. There could have been charges along with direct energy, because Dr. Judy Wood's stuff does make sense about the dustification going into John Hutchinson's work, and where he and I've had both of them on the show. We talked about his work where he, through his rays that he's come up with, actually jellified metal on a 16 miller film before the day of special effects and all this. So you put it all together, yeah, there probably was direct energy weapon in conjunction with explosives to bring the building down. So there you are. You've accomplished everything, and you didn't leave anything out. And then there's people. Was there planes or no planes? Well, if there was planes, then where are the people? Then you can look up people. You get too bogged down in the details, and then you lose the high ground, because the opposition will then go into one of those details where you have questionable thing, and they'll hammer on that. And like in Alex Jones' case, when they're talking about the Sandy Hook, he didn't even say that. And I listened to him. I listened to when I'm driving. At the time, there's really no one else to listen to, and the ones I have listened to are and I don't like Alex when he gets off. He gets a little, what's it, performance art, as he puts it, and it does get to me after a while. But there's information there, so if you want to wade through all of that. But this is the problem, is if you block off Alex Jones and say, well, he's a Jewish, his wife is Jewish. Well, his ex-wife is Jewish, if it matters. He's Mason, or he's actually Bill Cooper, or he killed Bill Cooper, and you go all that route, you miss the forest through the trees or pseudo trees. And so that's where I want to say, people, you got to pull back a little bit and go through it. Now it's obvious now, going on with this migrant stuff going on. So it's obvious that this is a plan to. I don't know if the word is invasion. I mean, I used the word invasion last week because technically it is. Technically, a mob of people from another country marching to come across your country illegally and uninvited, that's an invasion. All right. But I think the plan behind it is to put pressure on Trump to hope that he, does something like mow him down. No one's coming in this country, shoot them all down, which would be a PR nightmare. And you would have the people try to remove him from office. He's crazy. And, that's their hope. I don't think they think that's going to happen, but that's probably what they're hoping. But what they're probably hoping is he does something he does they could use for propaganda. Now, they already have things queued up in case he does perfect. So he's got to do something out of the box that they're not prepared for to deal with this. He seems very confident about it when I've seen him on the rallies. He says, I got that taken care of. Wait, you'll see. You'll see next week, So he thinks he has something anyway. It'll be interesting. But of course, this spin, again, this is where we're talking about the fake news and whatnot. You have these poor migrants are trying to go. But then if you look at them, they don't look poor. They're all young men. Most of them are. You have a couple of token people that they can use for Photoshops. You have vehicles now helping them trying to get there sooner because they want to get to the border before the elections so that something can happen and then they can harp on it all the day before the elections or day of the elections and get people to emotionally recoil from voting Republican. That's the plan. I mean, to me, it's like obvious. Now, can I prove that? Like, do I have a paper signed by Pelosi saying that this is the plan? No, I don't have that. Okay, but I do have it's a reasonable, logical conclusion, and you have to wait and see how things work out. I'm now forgetting the original point I was going to bring up. Oh, I was reading a comment by I think he's in the chat room, Kelvin, I think it was, about the EMP and the effect on the grid. And I did a show a while back. I posted the link and was commenting to him that his point was that it was a I don't know if it was Rothschild, whatever, conspiracy, got Georgia Guidestones, so that when this event happened, and that the people would be destitute and it would thin out population. Now, that's possible, but in the program I did with Matt Stein, who was an engineer, albeit liberal, albeit buys global warming, all that stuff. I'm sure he's an anti-Trump, but his physics as being an engineer was spot on. He did a white paper on showing that the way that you could change these things are to put up, I'm trying to think of the technical word, shunts, so that what happens when there's an EMP is that the particles, so when you generate electricity, what a generator does is it takes a wad of wire and rotates it around in a magnet, the opposite of a motor. And as eugenics, yeah, okay. When you spin the motor, when you spin the coil wire in the magnetic field, it generates a current of particles. Well, another way to do that, to get current on a line, is to have particles going by the line. And so what happens is all these particles come in from the EMP, they hit the copper wire or aluminum wire or whichever it is up there, and they start to go down the wire. Well, you create an overload because of this. You have these billions and trillions of particles coming. You have an overload on the wire, and you burn out the transformers. But so what you do that and you can even have the wire melting, and it happens within a very short period of time. So what you end up doing is you end up having all the transformers and all this stuff breaks down, and you have the wires like melting and falling down. So what Matt proposed was circuit breakers that when the current rises, they can shunt the ground very quickly, the current, the overcurrent. So it would, instead of building this current up along the way, each pole probably along the way would have this mechanism that it would shunt it to ground, so that the particles would be going to ground and not be going down the way, getting bigger and bigger current and melting the wire. And this happened back I'm going to say the early 1900s, or was it 1890s or something? There was a big EMP from the sun, but there was no major power lines then. They had some telephone wires, and they melted and fell down because they did just what I said. Well, today you have satellites, and you have all the power grids all over the place, which would all break down. And they all break. Just imagine this. It's bad enough in a storm, like Puerto Rico. How long did it take? Of course, there's a lot of political stuff there and people pocketing money, but when you have a major storm that knocks down power, it takes a long time to rebuild it. And that's what the rest of the United States, having the ability to supply parts. Now you take a massive EMP from the sun, you have, depending how long it is, I mean, if the Earth rotates a day, now you've showered the entire world. So you're going to have large, huge portions of all civilized, I shouldn't say civilized, what would be the word, electronicized, I guess, world. You would have all of that stuff melting out. You don't even have a fraction of the parts to fix one city, let alone the world. It would take decades just to build the parts to fix it, the volume of it. And so what Matt came up with was a plan that allowed these shunts to be put in. But in his work, he showed that the power companies, it would cost a couple $1 billion. The power companies don't want to do it because it's saying it's the government's responsibility, it's not ours, and they don't want to flick the money. And the government is saying, no, it's private sector's responsibility, it's not ours. And because this particular possibility, while being it will happen someday. No question about it. It's not going to happen necessarily tomorrow. It's not imminent, but it's obviously going to happen. And so when it comes into, that thing, the people with the dollar, I don't want to pay for this, it may not happen for 100 years. So then we've wasted the money for this and so on. But the point that was brought up was that the eugenics factor of it was that this was a planned way to get rid of people. Now, the flaw I have with that is that it's a lousy plan, because the sun may not flare for 1,000 years, 10,000 years, 100 years. It could flare tomorrow. And if the indications or anything, the sun's in a real quiet position right now. So if that was a plan for eugenics, it's kind of a lousy one, because you're going like, yeah, here's a way we'll get rid of people, and it may not happen for 1,000 years, but if it does, we'll get rid of them. I think that if I was going to come up with a eugenics plan, would be to simply turn off the electricity. You don't have to have it. All you got to do is lie and say, hey, I got a problem with it, and shut down electricity in the middle of the winter in the north. And within, of course, the gas would work for a while, but the gas does run on their own generators, gas-fired generators. But you would end up having, you want to thin out the population, turn off the electricity in the winter, and you'll thin out the population, all right. Carrington event, that's the one that happened. Was it 1859? Yeah, okay. So it could happen. And it would do that. There's no question about it that if that happened, we would be all sunk. The world would be sunk. You'd be back to starting fires in your backyard cooking. And, with all the, and then plus EMPs would affect computers and cars and all that to a degree. But I also want to mention that, I don't want to get into an EMP show here, but, a car is made out of metal. So the car itself is protection for the circuitry inside. For the most part, I guess if you put a ground strap on it, that would be, you pull your car in the garage and you have a nice copper ground going into the ground. You just clip onto it. That would help, provided if you lived underground, the ground would help too. You could probably, put a Faraday cage in your ceiling and ground it. You'd probably be safe. Yeah, flu shots. There you go. Flu shots is a good way to screw people up. So I do think that eugenics is obviously alive and well. I mean, look at Planned Parenthood. It's eugenics. The founder of Planned Parenthood unapologetically said it was. Literally racial eugenics. So, and if you want to look at this country compared to Russia, let's say, Russia has millions and millions and millions of underground, they have underground facilities that can handle millions of people. They've had air raids, or we call them, I would say air raids back from the old days, but they've had practices in Moscow where everybody in Moscow's a big city, millions of people, right? Just like think Chicago, New York, L.A., San Francisco, and they've had them go into these bunkers in preparation. Now, here in the U.S., where's your bunker? Where's the government fallout? Remember the old, well, I don't know if you're old enough, you remember the fallout shelters? You used to walk down the street, you'd see the little radiation sign, or I think it's a FS for fallout shelter, and there'd be an arrow, and you would go down into a basement, and they'd had them around the place. When's the last time you've seen one of those signs? I'm sure if you're 30 years old, you have never seen them. So at one point, they used to have a bombing idea, but the U.S. came up with the idea of if that no one would ever strike us, so we don't have to worry about it. Or if they do, we could thin out the herd a little bit. Russia's aspect is they want to be able to survive the first hit, and then they will, they'll end up demolishing whoever had the first hit, and so their goal is to survive the first punch. The United States' goal is to never have the first punch, or don't care if we all toast. Yeah, we're getting off. Well, we might as well have a free talk here. A lot of these underground facilities they show. Now, I was delivering a load into, let me think, what is it? Kansas City. There's Missouri and Nebraska, right? I was in the Missouri side, I believe. And I had to make a delivery to a warehouse, and the warehouse was in a former mine. They actually she took a mine, and inside, I drove the truck inside, and there's various levels and whatnot. I didn't have to go down any levels, but I had to go in and make turns and back in. You could see it was a coal mine, and they changed the coal mine into a giant warehouse. So I've seen video showing this exact thing. Trucks going into these facilities, which I went in personally. Not the same exact facility, but the same idea in the same general area. There's a bunch of mines down there. And so they went into these mines, and they're going, see, look at these trucks bringing them into the mines, and they're trying to look into mines, and there's guards, security guards telling them not to go in there. Well, it's a warehouse. Now, I'm not saying somebody's not using these underground things for some type of facilities for an elite group to go down there. But when somebody does a report and they show these trucks bringing them in and say this is what it is, and someone can either say, no, if you actually look up the place, it's a warehouse, and they have this there and that there. Now that whole concept is now gone. It's been discredited because the one choice that was picked was an actual warehouse. So you can talk more theoretically in that here are these facilities to be used, but the evidence that has been put forth, the ones I've seen anyway, have shown this. Yeah, the presidential text to take cover, I'm going to mention that too. I might as well. Yeah, I guess you don't mind if I just kind of go along with this. I think it was President Obama, might have been Bush, I think it was Obama. They made the news facilities and communication facilities put in, they teed into their system that those facilities cannot stop. So in other words, the president sits at his desk, presses a button. I mean, I don't know if it's literally like that. And he is live on all TV networks, all radio networks, and those networks can't do anything about it. This was put in. And a lot of people said that, he's getting ready for martial law and everything like that. Remember, we're going to take over, and they're doing all this stuff. So the same system is now under Trump's control. So with the mainstream media, I said so a lot. It's another word that I can't stand. Mainstream media, of course, is insulating their viewers from truth and reality by coming up with all these fake news and echo chamber stuff. So what Trump did by putting that little text out may have been testing it to make sure it works, but it also is letting them know, hey, if I need to, I can get around your butt. I'll go live on TV. I'll go live on cable. I'll go live on news, radio, and I'll go live on cell phones, and I'll go right around you. So I'm thinking it was more of a test / a warning to the media, and that if something does happen, let me just come up with a scenario. The Republicans have a red wave, or at least a pink one. I mean, in other words, they gain seats instead of losing them. But even if they gain a couple, now Trump doesn't have to worry about being impeached. So Trump goes out and fires, whoever, brings in his own investigator, hires his own people, brings in new people in the FBI and DJ. They go in and investigate. Meanwhile, the deep state, the extreme left, and their followers are going wild. Well, Trump goes live and says, I don't want to sound like Q here because I'm not a big fan of Q. What he says may come to pass, but what Q says does not mean anything to me. It's some guy just talking. I'm making more sense than Q in that I'm coming up with logical reasons, all right? But so he does this. He ends up having arrests, flips the switch, goes live, and explains and shows all the evidence and shows footage. Well, not all of it. He shows evidence and footage of what's going on. Tapes, audio, and explains to the people why this is going on. Now, a lot of people aren't going to believe it anyway, but many people will. And this is what I think is possible. If they lose the election and it becomes a blue wave, you will see them move to try and impeach Trump as soon as possible and then kowtow Pence. But and if they get like the House but not the Senate, they'll never impeach him. But they'll make it so that he can't do nothing ever again. until he's out of there, and then blame him. So that's one thing. Now, the migrants, great seller for building the wall. Now, I have a problem with the wall, personally. It's like, I understand it. I understand with drugs and with just simply people coming here who are coming here to drain social services, whether they're legitimate refugees or not, the volumes of it. I understand it. The problem I have with a wall is it works two ways. So just like Obama put in this circumvention circuit that he can take charge and talk over all the media, now Trump can use it against Obama and his people if they're going to show that illegal spying and whatnot was being done. So now Trump can use his own weapon against Obama. The wall, using to keep people out, can also be used to keep people in. So just think of this scenario. They end up building the wall. The left ends up getting forced to build the wall. They turn around and use the wall when they may win in the future to stop people from leaving. They already got TSA tied up. So, you want to go on traveling, you're going to have to get ready to get groped or irradiated and whatnot. And then some people are on a don't fly list. They don't even know why. So they already got that kind of bottled up, but now you can simply walk across the border. And that'll happen too. Let me see what else is going on here in the chat room. Yeah, so I'm in favor of the idea of I'm in favor of the wall because when you weigh it all, at this point in time, someday we may regret it, but it's a good idea at this point because your options are using like microwave radiation walls or bullets or something like that, which again could be used both ways. So to me, a physical wall would be better. I mean, it worked for a while in Berlin, but they were walling people in as opposed to keeping people out. But eventually, the people who were in, the wall fell. Yeah, I think people are talking in the chat room about China is a threat. I think China is the worst threat of all because China's already on the page with the world government. They're sitting at the table, world government. They may have they're very patient. They may have a plan to eventually take over the world government. I don't know. But the only threat to world domination is the United States, and not even all of the United States. The extreme left is already on the page with this, and there's a lot of people in government who are on that same page. So the idea of this is that the United States is the threat to the world. It is a threat to the world. I mean, the neocons provide their own kind of threat, which I don't like. And in fact, if I had to criticize Trump, one of the things would be in Syria. But then at the same breath, I say, well, maybe Trump's hands are tied. He's got to. This is my personal assessment, and this is just what I'm saying. My assessment. It doesn't mean it's actually true, but it fits to me when I look out and look at the evidence. It fits. Trump figured out he was going to be CEO of the United States. Once, just like a World Wrestling or just like reality TV, all the hoopla and the holler was going to fade away. Hillary and those people are going to relax. Trump was going to go in and be CEO and was going to get the job done. Well, when he got elected and walked in, whoa, he got introduced to the deep state. He has Hillary and company turning up the burners to unprecedented, violence and whatnot, and it knocked him to a loop. I think he lost his footing. It's like, holy cow, what the heck did I get into here? This is a mess. So, throughout history, the person who stays in power has the military behind him. Trump is a kind of a, he is America first in military. He looks at it in kind of a John Wayne romantic role. So Trump makes sides with the military, and they support him, and therefore that's his power in the back. Military intelligence and military surveillance and all that stuff, is working with him and the Secret Service to combat the deep state type stuff. So with the bombing in Syria and all that, what was happening there is they wanted to send in troops on the ground, they being the neocons. When the so-called gas attack hurt, Trump goes, oh, that's terrible, we got to stop that. And he orders a bombing of a near vacant place, warns the Russians and Syrians ahead of time to get out of there so that collateral damage is to a minimum. I mean, one life is death. And so I'm not trying to belittle that, but I'm looking at it in a big picture sense. Because he did that, he goes, that'll show them we can't take care of this stuff. And all the neocon call to put troops on the ground had to step back because it's like, well, darn, I didn't want to do that. We wanted to put troops around. All right. So then, there's more. We got gas bomb attacks type 2 and all this stuff going on. And what Trump's trying to do is keep the military on his side while keeping the neocons at check. Now, I think he got a big boost from this Kavanaugh. I think a lot of the neocons, like Mitch McConnell and I can't think of his name now, because, of course, I'm seeing his face, and I can't think of his name. The Lindsey Graham. All these people, all of a sudden, the petals of roses are coming out of their mouth speaking about Trump. Well, I think that they realized that they were teamed up with the left. My enemy, the friend of my enemy is my friend, or whatever it is. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. So the left and the neocons are going to team up to get against Trump. And I think what the neocons realized that the left is, they are bona fide Bolshevik, Maoist, communist, Soviet American style communist types, and they're out for blood, guts, and everything else. They're sociopathic, psychopathic, and they would just as soon kill 1 million people if they get the job done. So they're starting to see this. They're like, whoa, we're bad. They're worse. So now Trump is now the better of the two options. So they're coming, they're coming to this side. If this is my assessment of it, if I was to be a pundit on the various things. So this is how I think it's going on. So now everybody's in a holding pattern because they're waiting for the elections. Meanwhile, the left is coming out with bombs, which it's a terrorist attack. When you spread terror, it doesn't matter how you spread it. If you spread a fake bomb and create terror, or you actually have a bomb that blows up and create terror, terror is your goal. So just sending the fake bombs is still an act of terrorism. So you have that aspect. You have the shooting that just happened the other day. All these things are going to be happening, trying to get people to blame Trump and Republicans for this. So this is the problem. China to me is the worst problem. And Trump is taking on China both in the China was basically killing us, bleeding us out by using cheap labor. And the United States is wrong. The people in the United States are wrong, both the consumers and the manufacturers, because they turned around and said, hey, we can manufacture stuff in China cheaper so we can have a cheaper price, and then we can also raise the profit at the same time. We could save $1. We save $2. We still charge $1. We save $1. We're ahead of time. And this happened for a long time. And it blamed on, of course, we lost jobs. We lost. And until China was sitting there, they stuck that vein in there, just sucking on. And the United States, both people, when trying to buy the cheapest price, and people who are trying to make the most money and all that, they all went along with it. So Trump comes along and he says, no more. Well, when you're in a dysfunctional relationship, and say you're giving, it's 80-20, and you demand a 50-50, the other person's going to blame you. Say you're something wrong with you because we were fine until you started, asking these demands. Well, you're just demanding fairness, but it's been unfair for so long. So it's not Trump putting on tariffs against China. It's Trump responding to the illegal practice. Well, it's not illegal. I want to say the unethical, and I guess immoral aspects by having slave labor and then using that savings to get American stuff to go there. So it doesn't mean Trump is an angel. I did an article. I wonder if I can look this up real quick. It's not a big article. I'm not a big writer. Let me see if I have here. I noticed on the website I didn't put last week's show up on my own website. That's pretty. Here we go. Let me go to the web page. Here we go. The article is called Trumpzilla versus the D.C. Swamp Creatures. I might have to take McConnell out of that picture because he he found Jesus. I think he found had a come to Jesus moment, so to speak, in Trump. But in this article, I go through the whole idea of a daikaiju in Japanese terms, which is in the Japanese mythology, the Earth will respond by sending a daikaiju, which would be Godzilla's a daikaiju, Mothra, Ghidra, and all these turtle, whatever the turtle was, all these things. And what they do is they have special powers that beat the bad guy, which is one of the bad Godzilla movies was Godzilla versus Smog Monster. So you have pollution in the earth. This was done in the 70s, early 70s. So Godzilla fights the pollution monster. You know, you get it. And they have special powers. But the daikaiju aren't nice about it. I mean, Godzilla destroys half of Tokyo while getting rid of Ghidra or whatever. But he has the necessary powers to get rid of the enemy source. So, I mean, I'm looking at Trump as a daikaiju, American daikaiju, coming into here, having the necessary powers and skills to stop what was going on. But there is a collateral mess in the process, but we're the ones that made it happen. We bought the Chinese stuff. We allowed these things to happen. People took advantage. We allowed the advantage, and here we are. So we all have stake in it. We all have a little piece in where we're at, no matter how good we may have been. If you look around yourself, you're going to find Chinese stuff in here. And there's nothing wrong with having Chinese stuff if it was fair. And this is what Trump is talking about. So I see this stuff and I go, yeah, he's right on. But now if you're making your business, if we're making your business on the profit margin from the slave labor, you're not going to like Trump because now your company's in danger. So if you want to bring your American company back online, or if you're able to go, okay, I can switch back to American or whatever, and then so you get these, some of these plants are opening up in America. Hey, fine. They're going to be okay on it. So that's the idea of, it's another thing. Ray is saying Trump is ignoring Chinese putting the chips in. I mean, let's give the man a little break. Put yourself in his shoes. Well, if I was there, I would just say, I would do this and I would do that. I'd have him put in jail. I'd lock him up. Yeah, and you would be dead. You would be dead. First off, you would never have got elected. My Ron Paul was my man, right? Not even close to being elected. He didn't have the daikaiju to get in there and fight the system, even though I liked his programs. So first off, if you think you can do a better job than Trump, one, you would never, ever get even close to being president. This is the practical aspect of this. You have to get elected first to be able to do anything. Then you have to stay in office, which they're trying their damnedest to try and throw him out of office, and you have to stay alive. And he's probably got the military intelligence, his own perfect personal security people, and he hired a bunch of Secret Service and all that working for him to keep him alive, So you got to give the man a break. He only could do so much. And again, I think he came in thinking he was going to be CEO of the United States. He was just going to tell him what to do. It'd be done. When he found out he was fighting an actual war, an internal war, a political coup, he had to, it was like you going in the ring and then you getting a left hook that you weren't prepared for. And now you're kind of dancing around in the ropes going, ooh, what am I going to do? Which he was doing. But now he's very confident. He's very sober, confident, and I'm thinking that he's got plans. And we have to just let it be. Now, a lot of people came to me and said Trump is a Scottish Mason or Trump is a Jesuit. I don't know. All the routines, right? And I never understood this. I never understood. When you say you worked for Trump hired somebody who worked for with Exxon, the first Secretary of State, people are going, oh, they're bringing an Exxon in. He's going to bring in him, and he's going to. I'm thinking, when you leave your employee from someone else, why you're going to still listen to him? You're now employed here. Like if I got hired by another company, I'm not going to go spy back for my old company. I'm in my new company, right? So I mean, the whole logic of when you work over there, then that means you're always going to work there. I just don't buy that. Is it possible? Sure, anything's possible. So I think that what you have to do is you have to look at results, look at actions and results. People say, yeah, well, there's still a lot of people unemployed. They fill off the employment rolls, etc. Trump's not counting those. I go, yeah, I understand that, but Obama did neither. You have to fight apples and apples, or I should say, you have to count apples with apples. You have to, if you count the economy the same way Obama did, this is your answer. It's skyrocketing. You have to use those numbers. In the same breath, when Trump says something, more people are employed now than ever before, that is also saying that people are coming back to work, who fell off the rolls, who are now coming back to work. So that's how that works. You can't. People want Trump to solve all of the problems that took 100 years to get here or more in a day, and he is doing so well on so many that it's mind blowing. So it's not that I'm a Trump fan, like he's some kind of religious icon. No, but I am stunned and shocked that this guy could be so well suited to be in such a incredibly negative position and do so much with it. You have to pick your battles. Exactly, Eric in the chat room. And Trump will get around to Syria. Who knows? I'm hoping that Trump is flashing hand signals to Putin, so to speak, to let him know, like, I know, be patient with us. I know we're doing this stuff. I gotta deal with this Russia. I gotta deal with these people who are pinning Russia on me. I gotta deal with these guys first. Be patient. I understand. And Putin, I give Putin a lot of credit. Putin had to deal with his own people coming up the ranks. He had to fight his own deep state. So Putin probably understands where Trump is coming from, and he's there. He's got his guns ready, going, look, if you shoot, I'm going to shoot back. I understand, but just remember, you shoot, you go over this line on this side, we will fight back, and it will be the end of life as we know it on this planet. We'll be back in the old Stone Age. And believe me, this is Putin talking, we have millions of people who can be safe, while you got none. So just remember, I understand we're being patient. We're taking it kind of on the chin a little bit here. But, and this is what I think is going on. Now, I don't know this, and, I'm hoping it's better than that even. But this is what the evidence shows my eyes. I'm not hoping for stuff. I'm not wishing away stuff. I don't want this to happen, so I'm going to ignore it. And this is where the echo chamber and let me go back to this is where the echo chamber and the confirmation bias comes in. It's like, we believe that this is going to happen, and so we're going to find all the evidence to point to that, and we're going to make stuff up if we need to. We're going to embellish. We're going to only count the stuff that supports our things, and this is what I'm trying to talk about here. I think it's absolutely imperative that we don't do that. Because you will get swept away. And I also want to say, now this is more of a spiritual thing. I think we're in a time of the awakening. Let me rephrase, not awakening. Awakening. Revelation. The apocalypse. The word apocalypse in Greek means the revealing, which is, in other words, things that were not known are becoming public. And boy, is that true. All these people who, friends and people in the media and people in entertainment and people all of a sudden are becoming idiots. But they already were idiots. It's just now you can't hide behind the mask anymore. So when you look around and see what's going on, take note, because what God is doing is pulling off the cover, and there it is. So I think Trump, not to give him some kind of a spiritual wings here, Trump would be an agent of God. I mean, just like the devil's an agent of God. Everybody's an agent of God, but this is the time to make a choice. So spiritually, I would say, forgetting what happens, forgetting who wins this battle between the liberal and Democrat or whatever, the time now is for you to make a stand. Are you going to make a stand for Jesus' principles and God in humanity, or are you going to go with the world? This is the point right now. This is where I can see where persecution will happen. Where I for years, I never understood how persecution, now I understand it. You have the Muslims being readied, the radical Muslims being readied as a zealot army to go against Christianity. You have the various plans in crashing the bank systems. The stock market is outrageously overvalued. Gold, silver, overvalued. So all that stuff crashes. The people are there. You have electricity going off in the cities, for example. You have all these various things can happen. Talk about the eugenic plan. This is in the wings. And the only thing that stands between that and them is us, but we're not out there. I don't see the roads being clogged with people supporting Trump or his plans. You know why? Because they're all working. They can't. I go see all these demonstrations. I go, how can these guys go demonstrate? I got to go out and work. So it's not even that these people want to do it. In Europe, they've had great history of this, where the government does something they don't like, and they don't go to work. They just crowd the streets, and we're not moving. And all of a sudden they have to work something out. My favorite story told me by a Bulgarian guy who was in America that when they first had elections in Bulgaria, things were real bad. A lot of corruption and stuff. So what they ended up doing is they went down to their Congress. The people pulled Congress. I'm going to use it in America terms. Pulled Congress out of the building and beat them. And they all resigned and they had new elections. I said, what happened about the police? They were helping them because they were the people too. This is what happened there. Now, I'm not saying we should do that, but my point is, we'll call it the good guys aren't doing that. And again, I'm not saying that's a solution, but it shows the commitment, how bad it got and the commitment. And what we're looking at now is I'm looking at it saying, can we make a commitment to go to the higher good without getting that bad first? Does it have to get that bad for us to get better? And I think what happens now is if at this next election, I think it's going to, if it's a red wave or at least a pink one, I think that will be, right now we have two options. Trump has two plans. The left has two plans, and we're waiting for this election. And if there's a red wave, Trump has plan A. If there's a blue wave, there's plan B, and it goes for both sides. And so we're sitting in limbo. I think nobody but God knows what's going to happen. The angels don't know. What is that? Jesus said that? No one knows the time or the hour on it. Not even nobody, but not even the Son, but the Father. I mean, I'm thinking like now, it's like God knows. That's about it, because all the buildup along the way here is just waiting. And if there's a red wave, I don't think there's going to be a civil war, because if you look at the Civil War, capital letters, it was army versus army. The U.S. military backs Trump for the most part. I mean, I would say very most part. And the deep state, a portion of the deep state is against Trump, and a portion of the deep state is for Trump. So if it ever comes to a point when there's going to be a split, it's not going to happen. I mean, you may have mass riots and you have all these guerrilla warfare stuff like you had seen in Syria or in Vietnam, Cambodia, and all these things. This could be what could be life for a long time, is you can have this underground who is causing trouble, but you would have the force of the military against it. So I'm not looking for a civil war at all. See. Yeah, I like that. Jesus is the man who flogged the bankers and so forth. If you put that in context, it was in the house of the Father. It was in the Father's house. The United States is not the Father's house, and Jesus never was political. He was talking about personal spirituality, and they took him when he could have pulled out his magic Jesus cloak and disappeared and went away. They took and killed him. And the principle he taught was, it's not about politics, it's not about fighting, it's about spiritual purity. So if you want to use Jesus as an analog in this part, Jesus cleaned his own house, cleaned his own area, but his point was personal piety and purity was the point, not fighting against taxes and whatnot. Now, politically, we can do that in our system, especially in our form of government, because it is a democratic republic. But Jesus never talked about uprisings. He never talked about any of that stuff. So, all right. Yeah, the thing that's happening with the Saudis, very interesting. I mean, I don't know if any human being alive could deal with this stuff other than Trump. If Trump is dealing with it in a method of honest, upright, constitutional, moral, or whatever, I don't think anybody could do it because of he has to get up in the morning and people hate his guts, and are urinating on statues of him planted around and are doing this stuff, and he's got to get up like that. None of that stuff matters. I know it matters, but he's also able to. I think he's some kind of not autistic, but some kind of social, not deficit, but structure in him, so that normal things that would hit quote normal people don't bother him, and yet he can still appreciate and have goodwill toward the population in general. And if all those negative people came around and said, okay, we want to work it out, we're sorry, Trump would be okay. He's amazing. He's amazing with all his flaws. And that's why I call him Daikaiju. Yeah, I like that. I'm going to see if I can read this. My glasses aren't the great. I have 3 times of glasses. Shortwave kitty. Purity is the understanding that you have no right to take from, harm, or dictate anything to another person, just as they have no right to do these for you. Yeah, I like that. The point being on this, let me change back here, is that when someone tries to put that on you, what do you do about it? And this is the kind of the thing I've been in. I mean, they took Jesus away and killed him, and he just stood there. Now, granted, other than supernaturally, nothing you can do about it. But, I'm not Jesus. And so when someone was to come into my house and do something, I'm going to say when somebody comes to harm you, what they're saying is, I know I don't have a right to do this. I know that I'm crossing the line, doing harm, and I know I can get hurt in the process, either legally or physically, and I'm going to do it anyway. So once you come into my circle with that kind of approach, it's fine with me. I mean, it's not fine with me, but it's like I'm going to do whatever it takes to stop this. The least amount of effort on my part with the most effectiveness to stop this from happening. That's what I'm going to do, because they're the ones that are crossing it. This is why when these people are crossing the border on there, it's like they're doing acts of war, illegal. They're causing harm to people. They're doing all this stuff in the real basis at that moment, let alone the economic harm and the potential crimes that'll come from those who are criminals that are coming in. So it's like they're the ones making the choice. Let me go back to an example. I think I said it last week, but I'll say it again. There was a guy in in Chicago, who was a kid, stole a car, high-speed chase. He stops the car, runs out down the alley. One cop goes after him. Another one comes to the other side. There's a young lady sitting there. Windows are up. He's got the gun out going, get out of the car, don't put your hands up, and all this stuff. And the person reached in their purse, pulled out a cell phone. The cop thought he was pulling a gun out, or didn't even know who it was. She was pulling a gun out, shot through the window, kills the teenager, got killed. Big hoopla, the cop, oh boy, she killed the teenager and all this. I'm going, hey, let's look at this situation. What person at what point had 100% chance of stopping that from happening? The driver of the car. When he decided to go on a high-speed chase, he just rolled. He could have got in an accident. He could have killed somebody along the way. And when he took off down the street and all that stuff, he made that situation. He put the officer and that young lady in that situation. Now, you can also say she was in the car with him. Maybe he was a no good guy. Maybe she didn't know it was stolen. I don't know. There's more there that I don't realize. But really, it comes down to him being it's his fault. If he would have pulled over, well, the white cop was going to shoot me. Well, statistically, that's not true. So you can believe that. Statistically, it's not. That's why we got to get into reality, because reality is what really happens. And in this case, when somebody runs in their purse after a high-speed chase and pulls out something, you're going to get a policeman who's going to be like in protective mode because he's already been put into danger mode. A great man recently stated, Trump ain't no Jesus, but they hate him as much. Yeah. So, I find myself being in a position to defend Trump because of the unfairness to him. It's not that I'm a fan or a sycophant. I am going, wait a minute, this isn't true. Whenever I find BS, I don't care who it's about. I told you, I gave you an example about Snopes earlier, that you can't just rule out Snopes all the way just because they have politically lied. You have to. The information has to be looked at in itself, and that should be everywhere. You shouldn't just accept something because someone said it. Oh, this is a good guy. I know he's telling the truth. No, well, maybe, but you should still have some backup on it. All right, I think pretty much. I'm looking at the clock. I got to get going here. I have a very unpleasant workday scheduled tomorrow, so I have to get going. Get ready. I noticed I didn't post last week's show. I don't know if I could do both of them tonight. But I mean, they're on Facebook and all that. It's just my own website, which is the least traveled amongst all the possible ways to get the show. So I may have to wait and do them. Maybe I could do them tomorrow or something. But I got to get the ball rolling here. I appreciate the people coming by in the chat room and talking. It's good to get the input and the information. I guess I'm noticing that subscribers are going down and all this stuff. I don't know what this is, but I do appreciate the feedback that I have been getting. I'm doing this because I'm doing it, and not looking for money or accolades, but appreciation is nice, and I've been getting this, and it's nice. I appreciate it. But if you send an email for ideas for shows, guests. I haven't had a guest on in a while. I mean, it's getting ready for Miller time again, especially since he's been talking about some things that I think would be good to go over. But and people have given suggestions, and I may have forgotten. It's okay to give them again. I'm not, if you repeat yourself, that's fine. Don't, I'm really kind of laid back when it comes to this stuff. Just don't. If you BS me, that's when I get a little pissed. That's when I get my ires up. It's like, okay, yeah. So, all right, we'll leave it at that. Good to see y'all. Lots of new names in the chat room today, which is cool. And I'll see y'all next week. As speaking of less visible, I'm gonna have to write him because he's now posting some readings from Yogananda on his YouTube page. So I'm gonna see if maybe he's available again. I don't know, but you can check that out looking at his blogs. But all right, we will talk to you again. God bless, and we'll see you.